All right, we are at a quorum, so we're ready to go. I'll call this meeting to order. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We would first also like to welcome Trustee Byron Wall here from Calhan. We're glad to have you. It's going to be, you'll find we have a lot of good work that occurs here. This is what I call the fun committee. So, and we have Trustee Paul from Rama as well online, so that makes plus everybody in the room. Okay. So item number one. Item number two is approval of the agenda. I can entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move to approve.
Okay.
I'll second Mayor Dixon.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Item number three, public comment period for items not on the agenda. The public can email general comments or questions regarding the agenda in advance to the office manager, or public comment speakers are limited to 5 minutes each, whether in person or via Zoom. Do we have any public comment in the room? And do we have any public comment online?
Madam Chair, we do not.
Okay. All right. That takes care of public comment. Thank you. Item number four, approval of minutes from the May 8th, 2024 meeting. Those are included in your packet. If everybody's had a chance to review them, I will take a motion to approve.
Mayor Dixon, I'll move to approve.
Randy Helms, second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you. All right, number five, presentation of our 2023 audit. Our auditor, and I can't remember your name, so you'll have to introduce yourself.
Kyle Logan.
Thank you.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yes, so my name's Kyle Logan. I am the owner of Logan and Associates, the authority's independent auditors. And I'm here this afternoon to present the results of the authority's 2023 audited financial statements. And so in your packets, you have the two documents, the financial statements, as well as the management letter. And so I'll talk about the financial statements first. We performed the field work of the audit around the last week of April, and my associate Evie was here on site. And during that process, we picked samples of cash disbursements to test the controls and your procedures as far as making sure that proper approvals are there in place, and also to make sure that it's being properly recorded in the accounting records. And then we also look at the expenditures that are charged to the capital projects that have been approved by the ballots over the years to make sure that they are indeed actually allowed. So based on the questions and the projects. We send confirmation letters out to the financial institutions to make sure that the cash and investment balances that are reported in the accounting records are what they show they are holding on behalf of the authority. We also confirm all the sales tax revenues with the state to verify that that's properly reported. We verify with the city of Colorado Springs the transportation revenues that are being recorded. We read the minutes of your meetings to see what types of contracts have been approved and agreements over the past year to see if there's anything of a financial nature that needs to be included in the financial reporting. Okay. And then we also test certain balances in the accounting records to make sure that they're fairly stated. We compare 2023 numbers with 2022 numbers and pick Lisa and Rick's brains to see what's occurred and what's going on. And so then after all that process, that gives me a level of comfort in order to issue an opinion on the financial statements. Now, keep in mind, the financial statements, they're responsibility of the authority's management. Our responsibility is to audit them and issue an opinion. And so the independent auditor's report follows the table of contents, and the most important section or paragraph in there is the very first one, which is the opinions paragraph. And so for the year ended December 31st, 2023, the authority received an unmodified opinion. What that means in layman's terms, that's a clean opinion. That is the best that you can receive from an independent auditor, okay? What that also tells you as a board, that tells you that the financial statements in this document and footnote disclosures are fairly stated and materially correct as of December 31st, 2023. So that's always a good thing. So following the independent auditor's report is the management's discussion and analysis. And this is kind of a written narrative overview of the activities that have happened over the past year, comparing 2023 with 2022. And then following the management's discussion and analysis, we get into the basic financial statements, pages 1 through 4. And so the first page there, statement of net position, that's like your balance sheet. And so that's a snapshot picture as of December 31st of all the authorities' assets, all its liabilities or claims against those assets, and its net worth or net position. And so your total assets for the year were 366 million, which that's about an increase of 41 million over the year. Of that, cash and investments make up 92% of your assets, okay, at 337 million. And then the remainder is your accounts receivable, which is primarily your sales taxes that were collected by the state in November and December, and then they're remitted to the authority in January and February. So we get to recognize those in the revenues. And that was 29 million or 8%, okay? Your liabilities at 24 million, this increased by about 5.6 million over last year. This is primarily related to timing on projects and the related retainages. Again, because the work was done in 23, but the authority didn't pay for it until 24. So we still have to record that. And then that leaves your net position or net worth at the end of the year, 342 million. Again, an increase of about 35 million. So you basically made a profit of 35 million over the past year. And as I've said in prior years, this is always a timing difference depending on where your projects are at, whether they're in the design and engineering phase or whether they're in the actual construction phase, okay? And so the past few years, we've kind of been in the design and engineering phase. We've had a few projects that started construction and a few that have wrapped up over the years. But pretty much all of your net position is restricted based on the 3 categories. Your priority capital projects, that's 266 million. The roadway maintenance, that's 28 million, and your transit services at 42 million. So that leaves your unrestricted of about 1.3 million, okay? So again, that's one thing we look at and verify to make sure that these numbers are accurately reported in the accounting records. Page 2, this is your statement of activities or your income statement. Again, it starts with the expenses at the top, 143 million. They increased about 19 million. Your capital improvement projects increased about 9.3 million as some of the projects started their construction phase in 23. Okay, transportation increased by about 2.8 million. This is kind of related to the new transit contract and increase in usage over the year. And then your road maintenance increased 7.7 million. Again, this is just related to projects that were scheduled for maintenance throughout the towns and city and the county, and just also increase in inflation has caused increases in cost. So that's reflected there. And then the next section are your general revenues, which primarily your sales and use tax revenues. Again, 154 million, slight decrease of 1.9 million over last year. Your transit revenue at 4 million was almost an increase of $1 million over the prior year. So starting to see more use of that. Okay. And then the big nice one is your interest income, 17.6 million. This increased 12.2 million over prior years. So finally, you are getting some good interest rates on your investments. So you're starting to see that, and hopefully that'll stay for a while. So, and then we had some cost sharing reimbursements. We grossed that up, but I know during the year those cost shares, basically a project is reimbursed to help share in some of the costs, and you probably see it throughout the year as being netted against the expenses. Well, the accounting standards require that be grossed up. So again, not a significant issue there. So change in that position, 35.4 million. So again, this may not always be the case once we get into the construction phase. Okay. So then following the financial statements, pages 1 and 2, pages 3 and 4, they're called the fund financial statements, pretty much identical to 1 and 2, with just maybe arranged a little different. So I won't spend much time on those. And then we get into pages 5 through 11, and these are your notes to the financial statements. And so the accounting standards require certain things to be disclosed in the financial statements, either to support some of the numbers up on your statement of net position and balance sheet, or just to some general verbiage that's required for a local government entity. Okay. And so pages 4 through 8 makes up the bulk of it. This is your significant accounting policies. And so it's pretty similar to other authorities, similar to Pikes PPRTA. Pages 9 and 10 are your cash and investments. So again, it shows you where your cash and investments are, and certain required disclosures there. And then finally, pages 10 through 11, well, this is the Tabor Amendment, the admin agreement with Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. And then there was when we received the response from the attorney, we had a little bit of litigation mentioned in there, nothing that would cause us any concern. But again, we just put that disclosure in there to make the readers aware. And finally, pages 12 through 13, the required supplementary information. This is basically your budgetary comparison of your budget that you adopt each year in December for the following year. State statute says that you're not allowed to spend more than you plan to or than you budget. And so that's one thing we look at as part of our process. And so, you know, it's always nice to say you guys haven't had any issues there with any budget violations with the state requirements. Okay. So that's the financial statements. Any questions before I talk about the management letter? Okay. So the other document that I refer to is the management letter. And our professional standards as auditors require us to communicate certain things to you, the governing board of the authority. And so it also talks about if we had any issues during the audit. Well, I like to say there were no issues, because if we had, you would have heard from me before today. So that's always a good thing. And you know, we did make a couple minor audit adjustments, nothing that would cause me to change my opinion on the financial statements. So pretty much the final financial statements in this document are what you've seen throughout the year. Okay. And the other thing, this is a tool for us to talk about either best practices or rooms for improvement in your policies and procedures. And the fact that there's nothing here is good news. What that tells you as a board, that tells you that policies and procedures that have been put in place by this board and previous boards are being followed by staff. It also tells you that you have good, sound accounting policies and procedures in place that allow for good, sound financial reporting. So that's good. And finally, I want to thank Lisa and Rick for their help. You know, they have the hard part in all this, because they have to dig through documents that we're asking questions about, and sometimes answering questions to things that have happened, over a year ago or 18 months ago. So we really appreciate their help because from our standpoint, it makes the audit process go very smooth. So thank you. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay, so thank you so much for doing
bet.
our audit. We appreciate it very greatly. We want to thank Rick and Lisa and for all of their incredible work on making sure that we stay looking good. And that's the important part as we be super accountable with taxpayer dollars, and we always appreciate that. So thank you. So as long as there's no questions, we can have a motion. Randy, did you have a question?
No. I didn't.
Okay, the motion is to accept the audit.
Move to accept the audit?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you for your
Okay.
service. So
Thank you.
we appreciate it. Okay, our next item is certificates of appreciation for CAC members. I do believe Emily is here today. So Emily, come on up. And Ash has also served, but she is unable to attend. So we'll get that certificate out in the mail to her.
Good afternoon, everybody. Happy to be here. My name is Emily Magnuson, and I'm a citizen of our community and a previous PPRTA CAC member, as well as now a newly employed Colorado Springs Utilities employee. So hence my reason for needing to resign from the CAC. And it's been a privilege and an honor to serve on the CAC. We do really important work here at PPRTA, and thank you to all of the board directors for welcoming me in today. And I really appreciate having been of service to our community. And now I'm just looking to do that in a different capacity. So thank you all for your time today.
And that is awesome. We promise you that if they pave after you put the utilities in, someone will call you on it, even if it's only one neighborhood in the entire year. We just need a motion to approve allowing Anne and Emily to retire. So a motion of appreciation.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second, Dave Donaldson.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We'll stop for picture.
Madam Chair, I'd like to just make a brief comment. We'll miss both of these members. Emily has been a very good contributing member for a number of years, and we appreciate her service. Ann can't be here today, but she was also representative for Green Mountain Falls, and she was very outspoken on some things and represented that community well. So we appreciate the service that both of them provided. Thank you.
Oh, you get to take the picture. There you go. You get a hat.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, in case anyone throws anything at you in utilities. And there you go.
Oh, wonderful.
We'll put these here for the picture.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay. All right. Thank
very
you.
much.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think we're ready for item 6B, our Citizen Advisory Committee monthly report. Jim, we're ready for you when you're ready. That's okay. We allow that.
Madam Chair, thank you. Members of the board, Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. So a report out on our meeting last week. We reviewed, discussed, and make a recommendation to approve the mid-year budget amendment that's on your agenda. And so good job there. I'm glad we're doing well and have plenty of money to do things. I often ask myself, where would we be without this and 2C if we had to depend on just the taxpayers or their rental tax or whatever for our streets? So we're doing a great job. We also reviewed the Colorado Springs contracts. They presented 6 contracts. We had a discussion of those and no questions or anything on those at all, no concerns. We looked at, we got a transit services report, but we also looked at the IGAs between the RTA, CDOT, and the city of Colorado Springs for some capital project grants. So you'll hear about those. Our primary concern at the CAC was just making sure that the RTAs was covered in terms of liability and whatnot, that even though the city was managing it, that we make sure that we've got all the guardrails in place to make sure that the RTA is protected on that. We also got a report from the city of Colorado Springs on the Powers North reimbursement update, and we appreciate the city providing that update to us on where that contract is going. So we appreciate that very much. We looked at both the city and county's change order and property acquisition reports. No information there. We all looked at the city of Colorado Springs proposal for revenue allocation adjustment, and we approved a recommendation to support that request. And Rick will cover more detail on that when we get into that item on your agenda. We did look at the template that would be proposed to use, and also that template when it was filled out, whether showing a recommended 65,725 for this particular year. We also did recommend that money be split between capital and maintenance. But we got some guidance that said because of the establishing IGA, maintenance money has to be distributed by a census data. So that money would all go to capital and not to maintenance. So that was a change since we had our meeting. We also had a long discussion on compliance of state technology accessibility standards. Rick had gone through the website, and if you're not familiar with this, we've got to make all outward facing data compliant and by state law. And Rick had gone through and looked at the website and all the data on it and made a recommendation for what to mitigate and what not to mitigate. And then the cost of doing some of that. So we took a long discussion on that. And bottom line was, we kind of said, maybe we don't need to be showing 2004 project status, that we would limit the amount of compliant data to RTA 2 at this point, and then maintain that for some period of time into RTA 3, and that we would archive RTA 1 data versus pay to have that converted and or remediated. And so after some discussion on the cost of doing that Rick will get into when you get to that item, we felt like that the cost to do that was minimal in the scheme of things that we needed to do in order to be compliant. And so the motion was passed to spend this money. It was $8,160 for the first 12 months, and then $4,300 for months after that to make the data. That includes our monthly packets, your packet, our packets, and that information to convert that and stay compliant when we go to post that. So the motion passed, and we recommend approval of that as well. And then I had updated you last month on the discussion about abstentions and whatnot on voting and how we were procedurally handling that within the CAC. And we, after a long discussion, decided to maintain the status quo. We don't have an issue. We have all of the members that are engineers, and a lot of them are, that do work for the city and county. They've been very good about saying, hey, I got a conflict here, and by not voting and whatnot. So we allow them to have discussions, but when it comes to the vote, that they don't vote. And so, we had a long discussion and all that, and we decided that we don't have a problem, so there's no sense changing it. So we're going to stick with what we've been doing and until something gets out of line, and then we'll reconsider a change. Other than that, I'm ready to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? If there's no questions, we'll take a motion.
Yeah, I do,
Oh.
Madam Chair, I do have one question.
ahead.
This would be for the attorney on the practice of having committee members who are going to recuse themselves because they have a conflict of interest participate in the discussion leading up to the vote. If a citizen was concerned and brought that forward and complained about it, how does that appear?
Yeah, I mean, so under the conflicts law, if you're going to abstain from voting, if you truly have a conflict, and I say truly have a conflict because the term conflict is very frequently used to mean you at one point worked for a company and so you have some affiliation with that company. Unless you're financially or personally benefiting from the action that the board is taking, you don't truly have a conflict. So I think a lot of these don't rise to a legal conflict level. But if you had a true legal conflict, which I think could actually only happen at this board level because the CAC's only making recommendations. But if a member of this board came to me and said, I own XYZ excavating company and XYZ excavating company is being considered for award of a contract, I would tell that board member that they should consider recusing themselves from the discussion, so not participating in the discussion at all, so they can't influence the vote, and then also abstain from the vote. So I've come a long way to say basically, I think at the CAC level conflicts, I think these conflicts aren't rising to a true legal conflict level, but to the extent the CAC is going to be modeling themselves on that level, I would suggest recusal and abstention.
So with the true conflict, for example, a CAC member works for a company which is being considered for a contract, your recommendation would be abstain from the conversation also. If they had worked for that company 15 years ago, it's a different level of conflict of interest.
Frankly, even working for a company, unless they're going to get some pecuniary benefit, does not necessarily rise to the level of conflict. The perception of a conflict and an actual conflict under the law are a bit different. If they do work for the company, in an abundance of caution, my recommendation is always, if it seems like it could be a conflict, better to treat it as a conflict because you're not going to be in the wrong that way. So,
and I would just ask that the chair consider that if there's somebody you think is deeply involved with a company, the president, the owner, that not only do they recuse themselves from the vote, but they don't participate in the discussion.
And just to that point, we did discuss that, and observations, as long as I've been involved, is that is the case. That if we start talking about a particular contract with a particular company that the city or county is awarding, the person is usually I'm involved with that company, or that's my project that I'm supervising, and so I'm going to abstain, and they don't participate. It's just a matter of practice, I guess.
Right. And the only clarification is, I would say, participate in the discussion or the vote. So that's great.
Correct. Yes, they do.
Okay, are there any other questions? All right, if not, we will take a motion to accept the Citizens Advisory Committee monthly report.
Madam Chair, I move acceptance of the CAC report.
I'll second John Graham.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next item is the financial reports. The information for 7A on our financial report has not arrived yet. And then I will let Rick explain B.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is your opportunity to review the mid-year budget amendment for 2024, which includes 2023 carryover revenue and some additional interest revenue of $10 million for a total of about $23.5 million added to the budget. Lisa generated the emails indicating the shares of each member of government and sent those out several weeks ago. They came back in. They went to the CAC. There was no particular discussion at the CAC, but if you would like to have discussion of each of the member governments submittals in your packet, that's certainly up to the board, or you can skip that. And the one essential thing that we need today is a motion to set the public hearing for the mid-year budget amendment for your July 10 board meeting at 1:30 at Centennial Hall at the Commissioners Auditorium, because please remember, this building is going to be under construction, interior renovation and construction starting on Monday for upwards of 12 weeks. So it's going to be uninhabitable for meetings. So yeah, a motion to set the public hearing for Commissioners Auditorium, July 10 at 1:30.
Okay, so yes, we are having the next meeting at Centennial Hall, and there is parking behind Centennial Hall. And if you bring in your parking passes, we'll make sure they get validated. And unless there's any questions, I was going to forego any of the entity presentations on the budget and entertain a motion to set the hearing date for July 10th at Centennial Hall for the budget.
So moved as described by Rick Sonnenberg.
Thank you.
Second, John Graham.
Okay, we have a motion and a second based upon what Rick described to us is our motion. Do we have any comments? Okay, no comments. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And that passes. Okay, and now we're up to the City of Colorado Springs, number 8, 2024 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. Ryan.
Yes, good afternoon. I have 6 contracts to present today. The first one is for the Tut Boulevard extension, which is the second phase of that particular project. It's a capital A list project. The map is included at the back of the memo. The project itself will extend Tut another 1/4 mile north of Vicky Lane. We have the road closed as of today and are doing that construction. The closure is going to allow us to complete that construction in about half the time as if we would not have closed the road. This particular contract request is for the design assistance during construction for classic design and classic engineering in the amount of $15,100. That's a change order to an existing contract.
Okay, keep going.
Second contract is for the UPRR, the Union Pacific Main Line over Fontenarrow Bridge. Again, this is a capital A list project with a map included at the back of the memo. This particular contract request is for HDR. It is to add alternative construction and accelerated bridge construction to their scope of work and add additional railroad coordination. This particular project has been complicated due to the involvement of the railroad, and so this is incorporating those services to accelerate the bridge construction and lower the overall costs. The amount of this change order request is $767,680.60 with HDR Engineering.
Okay.
The next contract for your consideration is for the Fillmore Street and Bridge Improvements and Trail Connections Project. This is a PPRTA 3 A-list project. The map is included in the back. The city issued a request for proposal, and ultimately 5 proposals were received, and HDR was selected to lead this effort. This is for a PEL, which allows the project to be set up and do all of the necessary work ahead of time. This would include environmental work, alternatives analysis, cultural analysis, things of that nature that would allow us to leverage future PPRTA capital funds and pursue federal grants for this particular project. It is funded through half through the grant and then half through the Emergency Bridge Fund. The amount of HDR's contract request is for $1,500,000.
Okay, and I do have a question on that one because you said PPRTA 3. Sorry, Rick, is that okay?
Yes, since they're charging it to a PPRTA 2 capital project called Emergency Bridge Fund.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead to the next one.
The next contract for your consideration is for the Lake Avenue, State Highway 115 and Southgate Road intersection improvements. These are two separate projects that have been combined into one. The city's project is at Southgate and Lake, and the state's project is at State Highway 115 and Lake. City and state have combined efforts because the engineering necessary for these two projects is very comparable. So we have combined forces to deliver the project as a single project, even though they are separately funded grant projects. A RFP was issued for the design services for this particular project, and 5 proposals were also received for this one. Basis Partners was selected, and the contract request for this particular contract is $963,235. The PPRTA portion of that is $96,323.50. It's a 10% match for the overall project. The next contract is for the Rustic Hills Improvements Project. This has been an ongoing project, and this particular request is for CSU. Whenever the city and CSU coordinate on projects, we have a cost agreement based upon the age of facilities and the nature of the utility relocation. In this particular case, the project was responsible to pay for 15% of the utility relocation costs. CSU performed the gas work, and the 15% of the actual cost to do the replacement was $363,462.67, and that is the city's request for approval to pay CSU for that work. The 6th and final contract is to provide project management services for transit projects. This project was advertised as a request for qualifications. 4 proposals were received. 1 vendor was selected, STV. This contract will be an initial base year followed by 4 option years. This contract is submitted for your consideration, although we are not utilizing any transit capital funds. It will be utilizing the standard transit funds and matched by RTA or FTA, the Transit Authority funding. But the potential exists for future PPRTA capital funds to be incorporated in RTA 3. Again, this is a project management position to help transit deliver all of their projects. The selected vendor was STV, and the amount is a not to exceed of $625,000.
Okay, are there any questions on the City of Colorado Springs contracts? All right, there being no questions, we'll take a motion to approve these contracts.
Councilman Donaldson, I move approval of the City of Colorado Springs contracts.
Councilman Helms, I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, those pass. Thanks, Ryan. You're doing a good job. You know, we might have to tell Gail she can stay on vacation. All right. We're up to number 9A, City of Colorado Springs Transit Services Monthly Update. Lan.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Lan Rao, Transit Services Division Manager. We have a very busy agenda today, so I would like to direct your attention to page number 82, the very last page of the transit report. A couple items that we included in the update section is our long-range plan is still underway. and we are making good progress, and you can see all the details in the report, so I'm not going to read that. The second item we included in this report is our customer service office move. We completed the bus storage and also the fixed route contractor operating building construction, and the contractors already moved into the new building. Therefore, the previously occupied 1070 Transit Drive is available, and we have converted that to a customer-focused, customer-open facility. So if you are coming to transit for lost and found or specific items that you are needing to talk to customer service, that's our location. It's right across from the transit admin building. Also, what was not included in the report, but some information we would like to share with the board is we are getting ready to participate in this year's Zero Fare program for July and August. This is the program that was signed into law this year, Senate Bill 230, and this is the funding that will go to other state agencies if we do not participate. So we are interested in pursuing this grant again this year, bring some funding back to our region and also benefit our customers in July and August. So that's my update. Happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So does that fall under Tabor restrictions at all, or because does it go to PPRTA or does it go to the city?
The check would come to the city, but we actually transfer the funding to PPRTA. It's a very similar practice to our fare revenue.
So it would be Tabor exempt.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate it, Lynn. Okay, item number B, City of Colorado Springs IGAs between PPRTA and CDOT and PPRTA and the City of Colorado Springs for capital project grant. Ryan first, I think.
Yes, there are 3 requests in this particular memo, so I will try to be clear about that at the end. But the background here is that in July of 2022, in accordance with PPRTA Board Policy number 31, PPRTA Board approved serving as the applicant on behalf of the City of Colorado Springs for the MMOF grant for the 3 trail crossing projects and 2 others that we will be bringing in the future. In order for the state to award the grant funds to PPRTA, a IGA between PPRTA and the state must be executed. In order to administer the funds and the project, the city and PPRTA have separately created an IGA that describes how the city will support the PPRTA in delivery of the project and perform all the duties that are necessary as outlined in CDOT's original IGA with PPRTA. So there's a chart on the second page there that illustrates this particular relationship. This is the IGA existing between CDOT and PPRTA, and then the IGA relating between PPRTA and the city, and how we will support PPRTA in that effort. These IGAs have been reviewed and approved by both city and PPRTA legal counsel, and both IGAs are ready for signature. The specific request by the city is that the IGA between the PPRTA and CDOT to receive the grant funds be approved. The IGA between PPRTA and city to administer the grant and the project be approved. And then the budget allocation of the grant amount of $853,000 in the MMOF funds be incorporated into the city's PPRTA on-street bikeway improvements program.
Okay, Jennifer.
I was just going to add, since this is a bit unusual, first time this is coming to this board, my endeavor was to get CDOT to agree to make this a 3-party IGA so that it would clearly define CDOT, the city, and the PPRTA in one agreement, noting that the PPRTA was the grant recipient and applicant, funding mechanism, as we are in all of our contracts, and that the city is actually doing the work. Unfortunately, my powers of persuasion are ineffective against the state, it seems. And they were quite rigid on how their contract was going to look. So what we have before you is two contracts. One saying the PPRTA is going to do a whole bunch of things that CDOT requires. And then the city agreeing in the second agreement that all those things that PPRTA said they're going to make sure get done, that the city is going to do them on behalf of the PPRTA. So just to explain why you have two agreements in front of you, that's why.
Okay, are there any questions? I actually like the engineer's diagram the best. I think that that's more my level to understand. So any other questions? Okay, so we will take a motion to approve item 9B. Okay, go ahead, Commissioner
Sorry.
Gonzalez.
I do see one talked about, let's see. On-street bikeway improvements. That's not any road dining associated with that, is there?
No.
Thank you.
Specifically not on Research Parkway. Okay, I will take a motion to approve item 9B.
Mayor Dixon, I'll move to approve.
Okay, a second?
Second, John Graham.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I know it's passed. I do have one question if I could. Those 3 trail crossings, Ryan, do they narrow the road at that point? Do you know?
My understanding of these projects is that they would be signaled crossings. We've got 3 in the works right now, and I think that these are basically replicating that same process. They're points at which the trail exists on either side of the road currently, and people have to go like a quarter mile out of their way to get to another signalized crossing.
Sure.
So this is signalizing the crossing where that trail wants to cross, and the users want to cross.
Without putting a bump, you call it a
that I'm
bump
aware
out,
of.
but a bump in, really? Okay,
Not that I'm aware of.
okay. Is it possible for you to double check that and just
Follow up on
text
what
me
you-
or send me an email?
Yeah.
Let me know. I appreciate it.
Okay, information item 9C, City of Colorado Springs Powers North reimbursement update. I think Ryan gets this one too.
The form is in front of you. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have about it.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I have some questions.
go ahead.
Ryan, do you know, it's my understanding, because I live right there by, that it's been delayed. And I'm assuming this is about the overpass, Voyager and Powers, even though it's called Powers Extension. Do you have any understanding of the delay that's going on that?
I'm not tied into the specifics of it, but I do know that the opening of Voyager does not correspond with the opening of the Sunset Amphitheater.
Yeah, I know that too. So
We're still looking to have everything completed by the end of the year.
so it's delayed. So the original estimate was set for it to be completed by September. And now you're telling me that it's by the.
I'd have to follow up on the
Yeah,
specifics and I can find out
look
before
that
the
up
end of
for
this
me
meeting.
and let me
Yeah,
know what the estimated,
I don't want to give you a wrong month.
that's fine. If estimated completion time of that construction area.
Yeah, let me follow up on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we wouldn't want to miss the first concert there. So, or the second or third, I don't even know which ones they are coming. Letter D, we have the City of Colorado Springs monthly change order and property acquisition report. That is, Ryan, I don't know if you want to say anything about that. It's
Be happy to answer any questions you may have about either the change order log or the real estate log.
okay. Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you. And the same thing, I would imagine, for El Paso County change order log. Josh.
You have a nice blank page in front of you. This is the memo, but there's one item there on the property acquisition report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about it.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So now we are to 9F and Rick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the board will recall, last June, at your June 14, 2023 meeting, the board approved a revenue allocation proposal to the city of Manitou Springs. It's attached in your packet to remedy a deficit in their contributions compared to their allocations. The proposal was accepted by the Manitou Springs City Council. The first of the two items in that proposal was a $600,000 allocation from PPRTA capital reserves to the City of Manitou Springs PPRTA capital account. The second item in the proposal, and I'll read a quote, "A commitment by the board to study options for revising A, board practice, or B, the Fifth Amended and Restated Intergovernmental Agreement between the member entities to address the annual situations when the City of Manitou Springs experiences a financial deficit." So what the staff interpreted from that second item, a commitment to study options for revising either board practice or the IGA to address annual situations, is we developed a template which shows what the Department of Revenue collects from the City of Manitou Springs and sends to the PPRTA, and then subtracting a couple of off the top items, particularly transit's 10% and the admin 1%, leaving a balance that is then compared to that results in either a deficit of the two numbers of the numbers that they contribute to the PPRTA and the net financial numbers that they get from the PPRTA based on population. And that, according to the template that the PPRTA staff generated, either shows a deficit or a surplus. For Lisa and I looked at the numbers for the end of 2023, and then we posted those numbers in the last page of the memo using that same template, and came up with a deficit for calendar year at the end of calendar year 2023 for City of Manitou Springs of $65,725. So that's what was proposed by staff to the CAC, and the CAC gave that a positive recommendation on a 15-to-1 vote, and added a condition that the $65,725 be split between capital and maintenance based on the 55-35 ratio. However, Board Attorney Jennifer Ivey has reminded us that the establishing IGA between the 6 member governments dictates or mandates that maintenance allocations to member governments have to be by population, and that's already been done by population. All the maintenance allocations by population have been distributed, so a piece of the 65,000 cannot be additional for maintenance. So the 65,725 must be 100% capital. With that, the CAC recommendation, as modified by your attorney, is a 15-to-1 vote in favor of the 65,725, and that it be 100% for capital, and for the capital portion to be drawn from the mid-year budget amendment currently under consideration by the board. Be glad to take any questions.
And this would be capital for A-list projects only. That's
Yes.
why I saw Jennifer making an A.
PPRTA two
So-
A-list projects, yes.
All right, let's go ahead and have some questions and discussions. Go ahead, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I remember talking about this last year when we did it. So commitment for the board to study options. So what are the options? Because I see one before us. So options plural.
Second option would be do nothing.
That's the only. Okay, so I recall, I will say what I said last year. My concerns on something that is overly formulaic would potentially be utilized by other governing entities who have a commitment today not to do that, but in future turnovers of councils could request, demand the exact same allocation formulas for themselves in years they are also being shorted. So I do recall very specifically and saying things such as, I'd be willing to look at this to do on a case-by-case basis, which I think is an option in a couple of years. Well, this is 1 year, so in my mind, doesn't meet the couple of years, but when we agreed to this, I see options. I did not anticipate a either or for one option. So I will very specifically say this proposal, in my mind, doesn't even come close to statement 2. Maybe the attorneys say it does. I do not see how one option before us today meets the criteria of a commitment by the board to study options to revise board practices on how to fund this. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Geithner has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm a bit concerned by this. I also had a lot of thoughts when this came up last year, and I think I've made the statement several times. If we are committed to regional transportation, we are committed to regional transportation. If we go down this road of dividing things up based on certain years, I think we are going to destroy PPRTA. And I think that what PPRTA does is incredibly important. I don't disagree necessarily with Commissioner Gonzalez that maybe we want, if we're talking about options, then there should maybe be more than one. But I will also say what this doesn't tell us is all the years before, what is happening. And again, I don't know, but I'm recalling from last year, there are some years where Manitou has gotten more. So I think if we go down this road and we say, anytime that there's less, we're going to have others come in and say, then we might as well just break up PPRTA and every government entity do what they do. It just does not make sense to me to go down this road. I'm opposed to this and think that we need to act as a regional collaboration if that's what we are, and that's what we've told the voters that we are.
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Graham.
Madam Chair, thank you. I mentioned a couple of things. Manitou Springs last year we went back and we looked at the track record for the last 18 years, and I believe there were 3 years when we got more money than we put in. So it's been chronically a disproportionate arrangement. 15 out of the 18 years we've been underwater, if you will. In a few of those years we're probably pretty close to even. But for the most part, the majority of that time, we got back less than what we put in. I will also mention that when we talk about regional transportation, and in the case of the maintenance budget, where that's based on population, we're a community of about 4,850 people. If you go to Manitou Springs today and you count the resident population, that number, plus the number of tourists we have, we're probably not quite double that number. It's summer, we're busy. I have probably closer to 2,000, 2,500, maybe 3,000 people a day who are not Manitou residents, but who are using our roads. And believe it or not, they're all looking for parking. So we have some huge transportation problems. I think we have several assets that are regional attractions, the Cog Railway, the Incline, the Garden of Gods is nearby. So to say that to indicate that we're one little isolated fiefdom from the rest of the Pikes Peak region is not correct. Our transportation problems are problems that affect the entire Pikes Peak region's economy. If you stay in Colorado Springs, eat in Colorado Springs restaurants, and come to Manitou to ride the Cog Railway, you need to have a way to get there. So I would argue that the utility of having adequate transportation in Manitou is important to the entire community. It's again a population-based formula for both capital and for maintenance does not work in the case of Manitou Springs. I have also, it's been pretty much a year ago, I was thinking of what's a fair arrangement for anybody, and we have a huge disparity in what our needs are. The needs of Calhan and Green Mountain Falls are different than Manitou's, and ours are different from Colorado Springs or the counties. There's a great deal of difference in what our residents need and also our visitors and the kinds of demands that are put on our system. So I do very much appreciate the work that the staff did and the CAC in coming up with this formula. I don't know what 100% a perfect solution would be. It's government, so I doubt there is a perfect solution. I think this is good. If someone else has a better idea, I'd be willing to listen to it. Thank you.
Councilmember Helms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was concerned last year when we went through this, again, for all the reasons that both commissioners have stated. So I do have some concerns about that. On the other hand, I understand exactly what the mayor of Manitou Springs is speaking to. So it is an issue, and it's something we should address. And whether or not we support it or not is and the amount that we support is the two questions that I believe we should discuss. In this case, this seems to be a small amount of money for this year, and my first question is this something we're going to consider as a quote an option every year? I mean, is this going to be continual? Is this something or is this year, 2 years in a row, going to be the final thing? I'm willing to support this piece this year, but also I want to be on the record that I still have concerns about continuing this policy. That's it.
Paul, did you want to speak, or am I'm hearing the puppy dog bark, so.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Councilmember Donaldson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Councilman Helms has touched on some of the thoughts I had. I guess I'd like to hear from Mayor Graham if he would like this to be done every year. Is that what you think would be ideal, or maybe every 5 years? Would that be good? And see if there's some up and down in there, or not. And then there was something else you said, Randy, that and then I guess there's an option of maybe not the full amount. Like, what if we did 50% or something? What do you think of any of those?
Yeah, I guess I should preface that by saying if I had flawless answers, I don't think I'd be here. But so I mean, to start off, I've thought about this a lot, and I don't have a perfect solution. And honestly, if somebody can come up with a better formula that in times of need, when Calhan or Green Mountain Falls or whoever, any member needs it, and that year to year we overall kind of do the right thing, I think I could live with that. I think Manitou could live with that. If you want to try this for a while and come back, we could do that. I guess my concern is, and right now, and part of this admittedly is we have a pretty good amount of money coming in on interest and so forth. So we're doing well. That gives us a little bit of a cushion for now. What's it going to be like in 10 years or 5 years? I don't know. So maybe it should be revisited. I think one of the things about PPRTA is the strength is that we try to solve regional issues. And right now I'm kind of wearing a little bit different hat because I'm saying, I'd like to get for Manitou to get a share. That doesn't mean the other people don't get their share, but when you start kind of pie like that, you run out of pie before everybody gets a fair share. we could try it a couple years and come back. If somebody's got a better idea, I mean, I'd be happy to listen to it. I was pleased and gratified when I saw this proposal from the staff. To be honest, I mean, let's try and find something that's going to work for as many people for as long as possible. And if you've got a better idea, I'm afraid I didn't answer your question, David,
But you did explain why you're still here.
not entirely.
Well, and the third option would be to try and do an amended and restated intergovernmental agreement, which, you know, this is just kind of another one-time solution proposal. Go ahead, Yolanda.
Okay, thank you. So I think it's one of the problems and the issues that the more rural communities have, and even though Manitou's not rural, but it's smaller communities. Their budgets are way smaller, and so when there's an up and down, they're impacted to a greater degree. And I think it's really, we got to look at the right thing to do versus being very purist about this. And yeah, we're looking at it regionally, but our rural communities and the small communities are affected at a greater extent too. And they don't have the boat that, you know, the cities have. And I would like to support this, and maybe, I don't know if the formula changes, but what I would like is a chart that shows how much Manitou Springs and other communities have been in deficit. And, you know, does it spike really low, and take that into account? I'm very comfortable supporting this. And just looking at it, when we look at the overall regional picture and the overall budgeting that we have, I think it's really important. And we do, as a county, use Manitou roads a lot as a city. And so I just want to be a really good neighbor, a really good participant in this. And I would like to support that as much as possible. I think the CAC looked at it really well, and a lot of them are much more seasoned than we are here on the board. So I would just like to do basically what's the right thing to do, instead of like, this isn't the formula and is this going to happen every time? So I just want to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Rick, and then we'll go to Commissioner Geithner.
Madam Chair, just a reminder, this is not time sensitive. So if the board would like to postpone this, staff and CAC would appreciate additional comments to maybe look at some other options. The staff just focused on primarily the one that's mathematical, but there might be some other concepts. So we'd be wide open to some other concepts if the board would be willing to share those.
Okay, yeah, and I feel it was important, since we had, although I must say I wasn't prepared for this agenda item today, but since we had discussed this last year and promised we would look at it again this year, I'm glad that we are, because I felt that we'd made that promise to look at it again second year. Commissioner Geithner, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just want to kind of address some of the statements around, you know, tourism and that kind of thing. And it gets to, you know, yes, any formula is going to have imperfections. I think that has probably existed in PPRTA from the very beginning. If you see some as givers and some as takers as a flaw, I think though that as entered into, it has always been clear that will always be the case. Again, if we were all to just get exactly out what our residents were paying in, well, then we really have no need for this authority at all. And I understand the concern around population versus, you know, again, tourism and how many people you have in your community. But I think that there are other mechanisms, excuse me, I think that there are other mechanisms that are better suited to dealing with that kind of tourist traffic, if you will. And this in particular, this authority is not the right one. So I understand, you know, the argument here, but I'm just going to say I think that a different mechanism for Manitou is probably better than trying to fit this, which I think originally was based on population because it wasn't supposed to necessarily, you know, be something that was related to tourism. And again, I mean, I believe at least the last year, and I haven't seen the data for all the years back at the beginning, as I said before, the county is probably, you know, in the position at some points of being a taker, so to speak. And I'm going to guess that the city of Colorado Springs residents are a large part of, you know, not getting back what they have paid into. So if the city of Colorado Springs goes down this road and says, hey, we want the same deal as Manitou, again, we're just in a situation where the PPRTA no longer works. So I think that I'm sympathetic to the issues, but I would just say, I would encourage us to consider that there are other mechanisms that are better suited to dealing with, you know, things like tourism and there are other revenue type sources that fit that better than trying to change the formula of the PPRTA.
Councilmember Helms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And to tag on to Commissioner Geithner's comments about losing some when we PPRTA were considering Fountain a year ago, not this year, but a year ago, to come into PPRTA. The numbers that came out showed a deficit for Colorado Springs of roughly $1 million a year. And we were willing to accept that based upon the numbers that we're thinking. So there is give and take in time that the larger communities, city of Colorado Springs and the county, can withstand some of that. So just wanted to make a point on that.
Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I'm sympathetic. I voted to provide the dollars last year. And I said, you know, if I'll be off the board after this year, but I said, if you guys come back, it was something not regular and not formula or written down. The option of putting it written down, again, opens up to future council members and you know, we know who we're talking about. There's one city that could destroy this if a majority of the board try to push the issue. Also, if you add a formulaic methodology exemption for one entity versus an ad hoc, do the right thing kind of stuff every other couple of years or something like that when you need it, right? And I think people would be open to support that. I'm not a lawyer, but if a citizen were to sue this entity saying you are using a different mathematical formula for one entity and my city is being cheated, I think they win that lawsuit. I'm not a lawyer, but I think they force us to either end it or force us to go to the mathematical models in which this thing falls apart, as was already mentioned, because one big city would get the millions of additional dollars, I think, if it went to court. And again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert, but my guess, if we give a formulaic rule for one exemption community, that it could be forced upon us for every community. And that's my concern. So again, I want to support ad hoc-ish, other ideas. I like it. You put it down as a formula. I cannot accept that because I think you will, again, as already been mentioned, potential ruin of this, again, potential of this organization.
Councilmember Donaldson. And Commissioner Geithner, I don't know if your hand's still up or not. So.
Well, one thing I know is Longinos isn't a lawyer. But that's good. That's good. So I will direct my question to the lawyer in the room. Does the commissioner have a point that we are doing something which the voters didn't approve?
Well, the voters approve projects on your list. So really it's the formulation of the projects that is what the voters approved. The IGA doesn't contemplate a specific mechanism for distribution of the A-list money. They leave that up to board policy. Now, I do think there's a point made there that why would you make an exception for one entity and not all the other entities, right? If you're going to use a very formulaic approach for one entity, why wouldn't all of the entities be treated the same way, such that you looked at this math for every entity, and then maybe there's some rough justice or something at the end where you switch things around based on voter approved projects? Because if the math bore out in such a way where an entity was getting more money than it could possibly fund projects that were in its column, if you will, I do think there's a point there. It's the interesting thing is how it all rolls up, right? Because at the voter approval level, this is a regional authority. So the projects are not for the most part, some of them do say like Colorado Springs citywide and things like that. But for the most part, these are all regional projects that the voters of the region have approved. They're not approving it as a Colorado Springs project for the most part, or a El Paso County right? It's because they're regional. So I think there is some merit to treating all of the entities similarly. I'm not as quite as confident that a lawsuit would turn out against it if all of the member governments were agreeing to treat the regional approach in this manner. But
I would say that I think in the future, if we were to do this, citizens or groups that oppose PPRTA would, especially in the city of Colorado Springs, could point out some of the things that have been mentioned here by Councilman Helms, combine that with this formula, which is favorable to one of the entities, but not to the city, and beat that drum and have they might carry the day with that kind of argument. So, I mean, one option I think we might consider is to look at this periodically, like every 5 years or some other number, not annually, and make a decision in that way. And I think maybe Commissioner Gonzalez has a point where we don't want a formula on paper, which again can be brought forward when we try to renew this in the springs as a reason not to support PPRTA. Something to think about. So I think I'm not going to make a motion at the moment, but I would be comfortable with something that is not annual. And I'm kind of being swayed by the argument not to have a specific formula, which can be identified in an anti-PPRTA campaign.
Go ahead, Mayor Dixon.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it might be an option to roll in population into the equation somehow. So such that smaller populations, it might be a potential option if they're
Go ahead.
coming up on the short
Rick?
end.
Well, the template, the formula that we developed does include population. It's whatever the Department of Revenue collects in your jurisdiction and sends to us that they collected from your jurisdiction, minus the 10% that goes to transit, minus the 1% off the top as well that goes to admin, leaving about 89%. So that is a figure, but then what you get both in capital and maintenance is by population. The maintenance by population is in the establishing IGA that can only be changed by a 2/3 vote of each and every one of the governing bodies of all 6-member governments. So maintenance is by the IGA. The capital allocation is by population by board practice, not in the IGA. So population is included in what each member government receives after the 10% off the top for transit and the 1% off the top for administration.
Yeah, what I was kind of thinking more along the lines of is, some of the legislation comes out and says if you're basically like we're under 1,000, and so we don't have to comply with a lot of the legislation that others may have to comply with. And so I'm wondering is this something where we can put some criteria in if you're under by, whatever number it is, 5,000, 7,000 people to try to help offset the potential of coming up on the negative side of things.
Go ahead.
Whatever the board would like to discuss and come up with.
So I think if I'm hearing you correctly, just to sort of restate, you'd be advocating for some sort of a practice. So the A-list projects are currently by board policy done by population. You'd be advocating for some kind of a practice where that exercise, you go through that exercise, but the jurisdictions with population under X amount, there would be a second factor where you looked at a second set of factors.
Bingo.
Whatever those factors might be. I mean, it's by board policy, so the board could define what those factors are and apply them in a standard way to anybody that meets those thresholds.
Okay, so I think we're about getting ready to some sort of motion, but the one more point that was made to me in our pre-meeting is that the extra money going to Manitou could only be used for an A-list project still. So it has to fit within the ballot initiative because Colorado Springs and El Paso County are not done with their A-list projects yet. And so it cannot, am I stating that right, Rick? It cannot go to a B-list project for Manitou.
Unless all 6 member governments completely fund, not completely construct, completely fund their A-list projects. But the information I have from county staff and City of Colorado Springs staff is that they will not be completing their PPRTA 2 A-list projects and be able to get to the B-list.
Okay, so based upon the discussion, we have an option for a couple different things. One, we could do a motion to approve. One, we could do a motion to deny, or we could do a motion to postpone, come up with better ideas. So I'm open for something.
Well, perhaps as Rick mentioned, that we could send it back to the CAC to come up with options. Because it's not time sensitive. And so, because I don't see that it may be approved now. So I think it needs to be, so that's not where I'm hearing it's going. And, but I just, Holly, I think you were here. I know for sure Rick was here and Longinos was here. And there was a project we were talking about and it was in a rural community and the board was really concerned that it was beyond, I wish I could remember where it was. Rick, and Mark Waller said, really, the constituents don't care about this amount of money. They just don't care. And do you remember that, Holly? Because Mark Waller went, it's like,
I don't
really,
remember.
guys?
I don't
And
remember
they
what it
really,
was.
they're not going to come and sue us.
But if Mark said really, it might have been something in Calhoun.
And so, well, yeah, it was one of the smaller communities. And it was like, and everybody voted. I think it was a unanimous vote. It's like, it was the right thing to do. So I just want to keep us like, be really careful about being purist. And as that vote, none of you have heard about it. Obviously, nobody came back legally to say, hey, you weren't supposed to do that because it was up to our discretion. And so I know that Rick was there, you were there, and I just think it was us that were there, but I just want to keep perspective because I see things like narrowing, everything has to be exactly perfect. And yes, we need to stay within our policy and rules. I get that, but there's just no room for flexibility and really supporting our areas that have smaller populations. That's all I'm going to say. So the best thing I think that we could do is to send it back to the CAC and get options or recommendations in a way that we could make this work.
Yes, and I would say maybe in the sending it back to the CAC, we all need to give the CAC some ideas on how we would like to see it work, because I see Jim kind of shaking his head there and beating his head against his chair. So, because I would, I know that there are times when El Paso County has helped Callahan. Well, I shouldn't be quoted on this. We've helped other rural communities complete their projects, Callahan, Rama, because if we don't help them complete a stormwater project, all of that stuff just runs downhill and it affects us eventually too. So I think that there's been a lot of flexibility amongst the entities here. And so I'd like to see something that works. And but I don't think we want to vote on it today, is my conclusion. Go ahead, council member.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And I agree with what you just said. I do think we want to be careful that we don't come up with a solution that creates a system where Colorado Springs always is the only entity in this thing which loses money or is receives less than it puts in. That might not be good again in the future when we try to get this renewed. And I do want to share that Jim Godfrey, as I was filling up this delicious cup of water and coming back, he showed me a piece of paper saying that in the past, this is the system is when a smaller community needs something done, the bigger ones agree to fund it, and then so it's a loan essentially, and then that gets paid back in future years of PPRTA funds. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking that, hey, the smaller communities are not being helped enough. So, but I do agree with I think the last thing you said.
Yeah, and that is a good point. I think one of the things that we can look specifically to is as you come to the completion of your project, is there something in Manitou that still needs to be done with the Hiawatha Gardens, your A-list project? And let's see if we could do something specific there too. And if the board would, if the board agrees to it, obviously, I think that's something. Those are the recommendations I've come up with. I almost hate to recommend anything else because I'd hate to see how much each entity is losing or gaining. I don't know as if I want to have the math done as far as which entity is losing or gaining. Anyone else have suggestions?
Yes. Well, given the discussion and the sentiment of the board, I think probably would be appropriate to postpone this and send it back for more thinking. And I guess I guess I'd have a question for Commissioner Geithner. You had suggested there are other ways to fund this, to do this. Perhaps you have some suggestions.
Well, I'm thinking outside of PPRTA. I'm just thinking there are other revenue mechanisms, LART and other types of taxes that are more specific to target tourists is what I was thinking, and that I would rather see the RTA reserved for kind of that more population based, the actual, resident focused formula.
I would submit that a sales tax targets tourists pretty heavily. But again, if the sympathy of the board is to postpone this, I would bring a motion then to postpone any further action on this and to refer it back to staff and the CAC to come up with some other ideas for future consideration.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
Okay.
And again, for some of those ideas, my big concern is an automatic annual systematic system. So something that doesn't do an automatic every year kind of thing. I just want to see some options that doesn't go that way. That I think that protects the organizations totally, while still being able to support them and help them and do the right thing. As we did last year, right? We did this last year, and I thought we did the right thing last year. And so I think this board is open to that kind of stuff. I just don't want to see, my concerns are an automatic every year kind of adjustment that potentially, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, could harm the organization as a whole. Thanks.
Councilmember Helms.
Yeah, for for the motion, and for the options, we were talking about if we're gonna vote to send it back, I do believe we need some additional options. And one of the options I would recommend is that it is on a case-by-case basis that we consider additional funding for projects. So case-by-case basis, something pretty simple wording like that. Thank you.
Okay, I know it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but my sense of humor is coming here. We could go ahead and build a fence around Manitou and then charge everybody to enter in. Or the other option would be anytime the city of Colorado Springs annexes on the east side, you get a little bit of the Broadmoor. Okay?
Commissioner Williams, if I may, I've had any number of Manitou residents who felt we should build a wall around the city and just only allow access to residents. So you're not too far from a more common target. I do like the idea of your expansionist, sort of your Liebfraumstrom, anyway, the expansion. So that's a novel approach. We'll give you extra credit for that.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to postpone and send all of our brilliant mathematical ideas into the CAC. Or otherwise brilliant ideas. I don't know as if I would ask the CAC to seriously consider mine. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Thank you for taking the time for that item. I appreciate it. Okay, item 9G, quarterly reports from member governments.
Madam Chair, your quarterly report from the member governments, just an information item about all the work they've completed in this case, in the first quarter of calendar 24. Be glad to take any questions or refer the questions to the applicable member government.
Any questions? And we wanted to thank all of our member governments for meeting the report standards. Okay, item 10, compliance with the state technology accessibility standards, the stats.
Madam Chair, I'll take the first stab at this, although it's with heavy input from Jennifer Ivey, your attorney, and Jared Verner, who's the PIO for PPACG. In 2021, the state legislature passed a law, then supplemented it with an additional law in 2023 that ended up with assigning to the Colorado Office of Information Technology the task of developing rules for ADA access for all public institutions for their public documents that are available to the public. So all the state, counties, cities, special districts, metro districts, all sorts of governments are working on this. The rules from the Office of Information Technology, OIT, a new acronym for us, it just came out a couple months ago. So we're with a statutory deadline of July 1. However, there was a state law passed in this session, the 2024 session, that gives governmental agencies a 1-year grace period from liability for lawsuits if they are making a good faith effort and making good progress toward compliance. So with that in mind, with regard to the PPRTA, the two primary public out-facing categories that we have are the website and our CAC and agenda packets, CAC and board agenda packets. So on the first item on the website, I went through the website and made an inventory of all the documents that are on the website, generated a chart that's the very last page of your agenda packet. And our very talented PIO, Jared Verner, has remediated quite a number of these items, as you can see in the last couple of columns. And Jennifer Ivy's preferred legal word is remediate, that is compliant with OIT standards. So Jared has remediated a number of the documents on the website. He's pledged that he can remediate others by July 1, as you can see in the far right column. In a couple of categories is by the end of the year. And then the other category is archiving, which means remove it from the ADA accessible, the new ADA accessible website. And the CAC gave this a thumbs up, but the CAC wanted to convert one archive item to a remediate item, and that's the third one from the bottom of the page, to remediate all the annual reports during the PPRTA 2 period, which would be 2015 through 2023. Of course, Jared has pledged to remediate the 2024 annual report by July 1. That additional remediation, that third line from the bottom that the CAC is requesting, will cost $1,836. So that's the only out-of-pocket expense for issues regarding the website. And in my opinion, we're making excellent progress already. Further have a good progress by July 1. And so I think we'll be in good shape legally. Of course, Jennifer can comment in a second if she disagrees. So that's the, so one of the issues before the board is, as you look at the list of items in my chart that say archive, if you see anything that we're planning to archive that you want to save and remediate, then we can generate a cost for that. So that's what I know before the board. So that's the website. The other category is the PPRTA CAC board agenda packets. That volume of remediation is too much for current staff. So, but not enough to hire full-time staff. So we would like to contract that out, and in conjunction with PPACG, also using the same vendor. The name is Civic Plus. Again, our excellent PIO, PPACG PIO, Jared Werner, discussed with several vendors and landed on the one called Civic Plus, and the fee that Civic Plus is proposing individually or separately for PPACG and PPRTA is $8,160 for the first 12 months to remediate the CAC and board agenda packets for the entire 12-month period, and then $4,300 annually, again, to remediate the CAC and board agenda packets for the second 12-month period. So if you have technical questions, legal questions, Jennifer can address those. If you have technical questions, either Jennifer or Jared can address those. And Jared is in the room and has a microphone, and he can respond to questions. So the recommendation, and I forgot to mention, is Jennifer's resolution adopting a technology accessibility statement and technical standards. So it's sort of a three-part recommendation. One is to adopt the resolution. Number two is the contract with Civic Plus for the CAC and board agenda packets for the 8160 for the first 12-month period and the 4,300 for the second 12-month period. Third is the $1,836 for the contract to remediate the annual reports 2015 through 2023. And then fourth is if the board would like to not archive, but rather remediate some items on my list, please let us know, and we'll determine the price for that.
Thank you to both Jared and Rick for all of their hard work on this already. This is fantastic. I didn't see this happening so soon. So Councilmember Avila has a comment.
I I'm just wondering, what are they gonna do? I mean, does the, does this organization lay out, how they're gonna make this more accessible? Because there's different accessibility needs, like, let's say someone that doesn't have fingers and just uses like a pin on their arm, that they need that, or of course, being blind. I mean, like Dolly does an amazing job in converting all the materials for me for PPACG, PPRTA, and making it readable. However, there's still a limit, right, to doing charts and graphs and those, summaries. So I'm just really curious, what are they going to do? I want to ask them too, are there going to be just verbal options like open up website to da da da, and I want to see what projects are happening on PPRTA. I just really, we're talking about paying this company this amount of money, but I don't have even a clue what that looks like.
Jared.
Sorry, I'm working the computer back here from up here. And so Civic Plus, the company that we're looking at for the vendor, this is very specific to the meeting materials and the meeting packets. And the change in what that does in a lot of these screen readers and technology tools, it's based on the structure of the document. So if the document is not structured correctly, that's where screen readers struggle. That's where screen readers give gobbledygook or unreadable content. And so that's where, again, addressing the structure, the heading structure, the text structure, primarily for vision impaired on the Civic Plus side. But that would allow but it would also, I mean, all this is going to meet WK 2.1 AA standards, I believe is what is in the materials. And that's the rules that we are required to follow. Obviously, anything else would fall under an ADA accommodation, and we could handle it that way.
I think it's someone who can do it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Try to explain. I don't think that the requirement is to make the content that the PPRTA or the county or the city or whoever is posting usable with whatever tools the impaired individual is using on their end. So in the visually impaired sense, the screen reader, so that it's able to read that. So it's compatible with whatever's being used on the user end. So it's not the obligation under these new rules to change the availability in a different way from what you're saying. It's basically to make it more accessible and usable, so it interfaces better on the user side, is my understanding.
Okay, that adds some clarity. It's like it could be as usable and easy to read, but even accessing it to get there, that's what I found to be a huge problem. But I just wanted to see what it looks like. But it seems like you're not being asked to like have a really comprehensive ADA required accessibility thing going on here. It's more of meeting this rule, and that's what we're doing.
Yeah, this is very specific to digital and technological items. So it's not sort of like ADA accessibility of how you get into this room or how you would use the facilities or any of that, or providing an accessible means to, find the meeting packet. It's the digital content that we're putting out there. So I think just because it is specific to digital content, that the focus is more on certain impairments rather than others, right? And the accessibility and how it interplays on the user side.
Okay, and I guess my other question is, so we have the year grace period, and so we hit next July 1st. Will we have the flexibility to respond quickly when someone asks for something? Jared, you're going to be on 24 hours a day?
Not 24/7.
Okay, just checking.
I do like my weekends to go to Manitou Springs.
Yes.
Sorry, too soon. But I believe, and Jennifer and I went over this quite a bit, I believe the statute says something about timely response, but doesn't define what timely response is. as it does for, say, a Cora open records request. We're gonna try to accommodate as best we can, but the goal is anything we put on there, partly of why we're going to Civic Plus, is anything on our website will already meet the standards. And so the goal is if there's anything that we miss somehow, that it's a relatively easy fix. Going through this process, the hardest part is typically your behind the scenes, your menu structures, and those kinds of things. Once that's taken care of, the content largely takes care of itself. But I kind of equate it to building a house. The foundation sometimes takes, the groundwork, the foundation, that sometimes takes the longest part. Once that's in, the structure goes up fast. We've gotten that foundational part, we got the structural part, and now the content migration is going relatively quickly. As long as it's done right the first time, as we go through code inspections, keeping the building metaphor, it's a little bit easier to remediate if for some reason something got missed or one of the standards was missed in the transition.
Yeah, and that's probably something for the legislative committee to keep an eye on if they start talking about, okay, so we give an Cora request, we give so many days. If someone makes a complaint, how many days do you have to address it? So that might be something for PPACG to tackle. So are there any further questions? Okay, so we have, first of all, we need a motion to adopt the resolution that is in the package. Resolution adopting the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority Technology Accessibility Statement and Technical Standards. Do I have a motion?
Mayor Dixon also move.
And a second?
Councilman Helms, seconds.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The second motion is we need to adopt a contract with Civics Plus for both, what was it, Rick?
$8,160 for the first 12 months and $4,300 for the second 12-month period.
Okay. Do I have someone who is willing to make that motion?
Mayor Dixon also move.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. And the third motion is to spend an additional $1,836 to remediate the reports from 2015 to 2023, which is the Pikes Peak RTA 2 reports, annual reports. Do I have a motion for that?
Mayor Dixon also move.
And a second?
I'll second John Grick.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you so much, Jared and Rick, for all of that work. We appreciate it. Okay, does anyone have number 11 agenda topics for the next meeting? Okay. Any member announcements? Go ahead, Mayor Dixon.
Green Mountain Falls has a bridge that needs a lot of love. Huron Row with PPACG is exploring a regional option, but it would mean we'd have to spend maybe $7,000 roughly upfront. It is likely we will be wanting to do something that other communities have done and do an IGA where when we come into RTA 3, we request reimbursement from that. I haven't passed that by the board yet, but I believe it's likely.
Okay, so you're meaning more than just paint to put hearts on the bridge.
We probably need to tear the bridge out and totally redo it.
Oh, boy. Okay. All right. That's more than a little love. That's a lot of love. Any other member announcements? It's a good heads up. Thank you. Okay. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you.